guys, welcome back to night 2 of our Facebook Live series. Tonight we are going to talk about hydroponic systems, the different types, what's good about each, what's bad about each, and just take general questions. So this again is our series of introductory videos. So we're starting off at the basics. If you're a little bit more advanced than the rest of our viewers, just bear with us. We hope to dive into those deeper, more difficult topics later on. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the chalkboard. The chalkboard has 6 different types of systems on it. This is not an exhaustive list of systems. This is what we feel is best for the beginner and for the people that we come in contact with on a daily. But if you ever want to talk about the other types, we're happy to do that too. So let's go ahead and let's start down here at the most simple system, which is going to be the wick. So the wick system, very, very simple, no pumps, no electricity, nothing like that. So you start out with your grow medium, that's your hydroton, your clay pebbles, basically anything but dirt, peat moss, rock wool, things like that. You have that inside of your net cup, which we'll talk about here later on today as well. The roots go through your grow medium, through the net cup, and they go into the water. So we did all of these illustrations with a 5-gallon bucket, but you'll see today when we show you the real systems that we've built, they don't have to be in a 5-gallon bucket. We did that to make it simpler, just to make sure everything was kind of uniform, to give you the basics of it. And last but not least, the reason this is called the wick system is because it has a wick. So similar to this is a real wick that you can get in our store to help you with this process. So once you start with your wick system, we'll also cover crakey or cracky, as is often called, later on as well. That one's actually not on the board, but I wanted to mention that because we go over to the deep water culture. This is these two right here, the most simplest, but deep water culture, in my opinion, is the easiest. You have your grow medium, your net cup, your 5-gallon bucket, but at this point, instead of your wick to bring the water up to the plant, you have your air stone. So your air stone is going to create tons of air for your roots. You're going to make sure that your roots are taking up more of those nutrients. They're getting bigger and stronger with that air stone versus just the wick and just the passive, like crakey or cracky system would be. On down the line, my absolute favorite, which we'll take a look at later, is the Hydroponic system. So you have your grow medium, your net cup, and your bucket. That stays consistent here. But now you have a water pump. And your water pump is actually pressurizing your water droplets and making them very, very, very teeny tiny. And they're spraying them directly on the roots. And what that does is it gives it even more of a nutrient uptake for your plants. So your plants are going to get bigger, stronger, faster, even more so with just the air stone. You can have an air stone in your aeroponic system, but I'll show you later. The pump and the pressurization of the water is going to give you tons of oxygen anyway, so it's not necessarily needed. So we have the drip system. This can go a few different ways. It can drip on top. You can, which we'll take a look at later, you can have something like a vertical drip tower, which the dripping is actually hidden. The tubes of water and everything's hidden from you, but it's the same concept. You're bringing water up to the top, you're letting it kind of rain down onto your plant. So our grow medium, our net cup, our bucket is the same. You do want to have your drip pipe, and how are you going to get your water up to the top? You need a water pump. So similar to how the aeroponic system pressurizes the water and sprays those roots, this one is actually going to take the water and pump it up to the top and just let it rain or drip back down onto the plant. So the nutrient film technique, this was actually the first advanced system that we experimented with, which we'll show you later on today, the one that we started it all with. But again, we have our grow medium, our net cup, we have our drip pipe, which we added here on the drip system, we have our drain pipe, we have our water pump, and we have our air stone. So the idea behind this is that it's constantly going to be flowing. You're pumping water up, it's coming back down, it's constantly recirculating itself. With the nutrient film technique, your water stays on. Your pump wants to run 24/7, which is not necessarily the case for the drip system, and also not the case for the ebb and flow. So this could look very similar to what we just saw in the nutrient film technique, except for this one's actually on a timer. and it will flood your grow medium or your area where you have all your plants. It will kind of sit in that bucket or that localized container for a little while, and it will drain back down into your reservoir. And that one runs on a timer, so you don't need to flood your plants constantly. We do ours, I think, 5 times a day, and they're actually getting pretty strong, so we might lessen that a little bit and kind of experiment with it soon. But that is your 6th and final ebb and flow. So now that we've taken a look at some of the artwork, let's see how this translates into real world. So let's go ahead and let's walk on over. I'm going to be right behind you guys. So this is our smart garden. This is the wicking system, and as you can see, we have our pod of basil, we have our wick, and the wick is just drawing this water up from this container or reservoir and pulling it right up to the plant. So I really like this system because it's fully automated. You don't have to do anything other than plug it in and make sure it doesn't run out of water. But that's how it is so efficient. It's wicking the water right up to the plant. So even from a young little seedling, it's constantly getting water and it's getting the nutrition that it needs. Onward this way. Let's go to the back of the house. This is where we have most of our systems set up. So let's go over to the deep water culture. This is one of our, really easy systems that we talked about, kind of the basics. So you have your growing medium, you have your net cup, right? Which is where your plant sits down, your roots they get down in the water. But inside here, there's also an air stone. And there's an air pump, which is right here. So the air stone is similar to what you'd find in an aquarium. It's what gives the fish, oxygen. So just like fish, plants need oxygen to live. So it's just making sure that they get, necessary uptake on their nutrients. So both of these systems right here, they are the same. They are your deep water culture. It's basically one step up from this one. This is the cracky or crakey. I've heard it pronounced a few different ways. I think it's just a matter of preference at this point. We are removing the air stone and the pump, and this is literally just a bucket of water, and the roots are right in it, and in the water obviously is your nutrients. Now let's talk about kind of the downside of this one. This is often referred to as set it and forget it. The downside, in my opinion, is you get some root rot. You don't have any oxygen flowing. Your plants, they're getting the nutrients, they're getting the water, but at what cost? They're going to grow slower. They're not going to be quite as big. This one we've actually had to baby for quite a while because the roots didn't reach the water all the way. So that's a little bit, I don't want to say annoying, but it is kind of annoying. So that's why I prefer to get those roots long and strong and healthy and not have to baby them every day. That's the key. So the nutrient film technique, this is the famous system that we built when we were, back just trying to figure it all out, and we wanted to make sure that we had a good grasp on everything before we brought it out into the public. And so this one has your reservoir. There's water in here, about 10 gallons. There's a pump that's constantly running, that's pumping right up this tube. It drops into this bigger tube. It goes down and around all the way to the end and drops back in our reservoir. So it's constantly recirculating. In here we do have 2 air stones, which is only going to help, not totally necessary, because remember, it's still moving, it's creating that oxygen, but it's only going to make your plants stronger if they have more air. So this is the Hydroponic system. I had especially just a great time building this one. It felt like I was kind of like putting together Legos. But in here we have our pump. It's pulling the water up into the tubes, it's pressurizing it, and it's spitting it out of those little red nozzles. So it's making the droplets really, really tiny and spraying them on these roots. We actually had some really large peppers in here until just recently. They got so big so fast that we had to take them out and plant them somewhere else because they were getting too top heavy. So this lettuce came over from the NFT system, and it is, I swear, it's got twice as big in like 3 days. And it'll get bigger, trust me. So maybe on one of the other videos we can compare and see how far everything's come. The ebb and flow. This one is, This one's kind of a pain. I'm not gonna lie. It's giving me the most trouble out of everything. However, you can do the most plants the easiest. Once you have it set up, it's on a timer. It floods a couple of times a day. I actually wanted to show you guys what happens when it floods. So I'll go ahead and turn the timer on. So down below, we have our reservoir, and it is almost filled to the top. It pumps via this larger tube up into the flood tray. It's constantly draining at the same time. The way that it's able to do that and still flood is the pump tube is a little bigger than the drain tube. So it'll fill up about 3/4 of the way. It'll flood everything and water it from the bottom. Same with these. We had some extra lettuce and some extra strawberries we kind of just threw in there.
And they are growing amazing because they love this so much.
They do. They're getting tons of nutrients. I'm putting the nutrients in the water for peppers. So I'm trying to get them to flower, and the strawberries love it because they're getting all the same nutrients.
I think we should mention too that the part that you had the most trouble with on this was really just getting these pieces in place and siliconed the right way so that they didn't leak. So initially the tub had a very small drip that was coming down, so we had to take it apart and re-silicone it, and it's doing fantastic. Everything's grown so fast now.
And drilled some bigger holes. I also realized that the holes were the exact size of the tube, so as I was trying to take the lid off to refill the reservoir, it was moving everything that was already put in place. Everything that was siliconed and supposed to be still was now moving and coming loose, and that's what caused the leak. So it didn't leak the entire time, just after I filled it up.
Yeah. She also added a couple extra drainage holes, which is spectacular because as you can see, the lid does have a nice space where it could gather some water as it drips, but where's it going to go when it overflows? So the extra drain holes in the lid will keep that under wraps.
Awesome. So let's go back up to the front. I want to show you guys the tower, which is a house special. I think it's kind of like an area special.
It is certainly my favorite. I love seeing how fast everything on this grows every day when we come in.
So we've actually got 2 towers. One of them is the nice big vertical drip tower. We started these with just little baby seedlings when we opened, which is been about 6 weeks now.
Yep.
So now, as you can see, they are huge. The leaves on this this cabbage is huge. This is red cabbage right here.
They are so big, like as big as my
The
head.
romaine actually got so big we had to plant more.
Yep, we take out the old plants, take them home and eat them, and put new ones in. And these are actually only in here for a week.
Yeah, a couple weeks if that. The basil does well. We also talked about a wicking system earlier, but I do want to show you guys. This one actually had some issues getting started. So the basil pod wasn't getting enough water. It wasn't getting enough nutrients. So it actually, I was having to hand water it. So I took a wick and I kind of shoved it up in the net cup. And now every time that the water drips down, it goes right into the wick, and it's just caused massive root growth. So all that was in just the past few weeks that it's been able to gather that root growth.
Past 2, I'd say. Even.
Yeah, it's only been a few weeks.
So Dottie says the plants are looking great. JD Wayne said very cool. And Kiwi says, which one do you think gives the best results, and which one is your favorite to use?
I think the best results is probably the aeroponic system. It's just because it gives it so much oxygen, and the bigger the pump, it's another thing to mention. You can kind of use any pump that you want on an aeroponic system, but the higher the pump, the more pressurized the water, the smaller the droplets are going to be, and your plants are going to absorb it that much faster. So I think the easiest to use and my favorite, and what would give you the most, is your aeroponic system. Let's take a look at the strawberry tower. So this one is actually kind of my favorite at the moment, just because all the flowers are actually starting to fall off, and that means we're going to have strawberries soon. So they're turning into little tiny baby strawberries at this point. Some of them are white, some of them are red, and it's going to be really exciting to see which ones are which.
Yes, I've never had a white strawberry, so I'm very excited about this.
And were there any other questions during that time, you think?
Nope.
Awesome.
Nope.
All right, well, join us again. Today was Systems Type. This is going to be on our Facebook page. Share it if you have anyone interested. You know, we'd love to talk to them. Have them shoot us a message. Give us a call, email. The email, you can either do growtimehydro.com or ordering at growtimehydro.com. And then our website is growtimehydro.com. Next week we're going to do light types and setups. So we will be focusing on things like, you know, this is our tower lights that we actually had to make. Towers a lot of times go outside, but we wanted to put vegetation and greens in these, and it's not the right time in Florida for that. So we figured it'd be best to put it inside. So to do that, we had to make lights. We're going to focus on the tent and just a few different types of lights and your wattages and things like that next week. So
Ken asks if it's easy to find out which plants prefer which nutrients.
So yes, it all depends on what stage the plants are in. So is it vegetation only? Are you doing leafy greens, you know, herbs, things like that that are only green? Or is it time to push to a flower? Are you doing peppers, tomatoes, strawberries, things that will flower and eventually give you fruit of some sort? You'll want to change it at that point. But I actually would really highly recommend, I think we talked about this book last week, but this book right here, in the back of it, it covers so many different plants, all different kinds. It tells you what type of systems they'd be good in, water temperatures, pH, EC. So I'd highly recommend something like that. I mean, Google is also your friend. A lot of this stuff is easily searchable. We're happy to talk to you about it. But yeah, it depends on the state at which the plant is and what the plant is that you're growing.
Since we pointed out this book, I want to mention that this is actually really great for what we've been talking about today, as it does talk about the different types of systems and how they work. It also has a lot of how-to stuff on building your own system. So as you can see, or as you did see, a good portion of the things we have here are DIY'd by us, and they can all be DIY'd by you too. If you can't find the items at your local Home Depot or elsewhere, we always have them here in stock, or we can get it for you on special order. We can sell you a custom kit even to fit exactly the space that you need. So here's some of the examples of pieces that we have. And Dottie says, do you know how long the plants will continue to reproduce, such as a cabbage, lettuce, etc., once you begin to cut the leaves?
So I like that you said begin to cut the leaves. So when you're growing leafy greens and things like that, you don't have to cut the whole stalk down, which I think is a common misconception. It will continue to grow. The most I've had something grow without bolting is maybe about 4 months. I think that's a normal season. That's pretty typical, no matter if you're inside or outside. But really, I'd say watch it. One of the things that we'll do is talk about like common deficiencies and plant problems, and one of those is bolting in your leafy greens. So if you ever see lettuce and it's real tall and long and skinny, that means it's bolted. That means it's going to give you seeds soon, which means it's probably pretty bitter. You probably don't want to eat it. You can try. It's still edible.
I would say from this nutrient film technique system, I had this at my house this past winter, and we continued to eat off of the same plants for about those 4 months that Alex mentioned. And because the temperature was controlled, we actually really didn't find the leaves getting bitter. I do know from the past, having kale and lettuce plants outside.
Yeah, even on the bolted ones, I remember you commenting that they were still, good to eat. So
very mild, delicious. I know outside with the heat definitely turns them more bitter, but we did not experience that with this.
I would say each plant is going to be a little different, but I would say probably 4 months, 4 or 5 months.
Christina Nicole Lewis says, wow.
Hi, Christina.
All right, well, I guess if there's no more questions, next week, come back and join us. We will be covering light types and setups. And then, what's the following week, Alex? Do you remember?
I do not remember, but that means I'll have to come back next week to find out what happens the following week. We got you.
It's all a big mystery for now. All right.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Have a good night.
Have a good one.